The Young Turks take on Trump, JD Vance, and Ben Shapiro. Watch.
JD Vance is the vice presidential nominee for President Trump. Now, if you had a time machine, if you go back 2 weeks, would he have picked JD Vance again? I doubt it. And JD is super smart. He also has a long history of public commentary.
You will not believe the Democratic lawmaker who actually agrees with Ben Shapiro on this. We're going to get to him in just a moment. But before we do, why don't we listen to Shapiro elaborate further on JD Vance and how Trump might have buyer's remorse.
I think he probably would have picked somebody like Glenn Youngkin from Virginia in an attempt to broaden out his base. Instead, he went with JD Vance, feeling, because he was right, that at the time he had a very solid advantage in the race against Joe Biden. I agree that our country has moved away from caring about the future because too few Americans care about having children. I totally agree with that. However, this description that JD Vance is using, is that politically smart or is it politically damaging? Now, again, he doesn't have a time machine. He can't go back and undo something he said now 3.5 years ago. With that said, Democrats are, of course, using this as a club with which to beat Donald Trump and JD Vance. They're trying to run up the gender gap. So one of the things to understand about this election cycle is that the gender gap is larger than it has ever been in the history of American politics in all likelihood. Males overwhelmingly vote for Trump. Females, particularly single females, overwhelmingly vote for Biden. And so they're going to try to find some sort of wedge to claim that all Republicans are sexist. And this is the wedge they're using today.
It seems to be working really well, if that's the wedge that they're using. And look, I mean, I will say this, Cenk. Kamala Harris, so far in her campaigning, has done a good job in focusing on that wedge issue, labeling JD Vance and the Republican ticket as weird rather than hyper focusing on threat to democracy, which clearly was not effective messaging. It did not help Biden much in the election. And so now you have Democrats kind of lining up to mock the Republican ticket, make fun of them, call them weird, as opposed to constantly fear-mongering about the Republican ticket.
Yep. Ana Kasparian is doing a great job. The Kamala Harris, campaign, they seem a lot more chill, a lot more easygoing than most Democratic presidencies, campaigns in a long time. And it seems like it's kind of the Obama route, in my opinion.
Ticket. So there were definitely portions of what Shapiro was saying there that I definitely agree with.
Hey, don't scroll away. Come back.
No, scrolling away.
Because you're doubling down on something that was already unpopular. When I say unpopular, the number one problem we have in this country and everywhere is not just as it pertains to politics, but it's particularly true in politics, is that it's the hardest thing in the world is to escape your own perspective. So when I say Trump is unpopular, or the idea that you should be forced into having more children, otherwise your rights should be taken away, is unpopular, a lot of people who believe that are like, no way. Everyone I know thinks you gotta have more babies. And MAGA is awesome, and everyone I know is MAGA. But guys, I'm gonna tell you the same thing I told Blue MAGA earlier, when they were pretending that Joe Biden was young and dynamic. Yeah, you can think that all day long, but that's not the question. The question is, what do a majority of Americans believe? And a majority of Americans believe we should make the choices on whether we have kids, how many kids we have, and then you should take a long walk off a short dock, because we don't give a damn what you think about our personal lives. And that also applies to whether we should use contraception, who we should sleep with, who we should get married with. Oh, do I have to ask JD Vance's permission before I go on a date with someone? And and which clothes did you wear? And are you in,
Dude, just turn this into a radical talking point so quickly. This is why you guys call him chunky yogurt, and this is why I agree. What the hell are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? We have to ask JD Vance who we go on a date with? What? And this idea to forcing people to have children? What? No. We're not forcing you to have children, okay? You chose to have children whenever you spread your legs. As simple as that. You chose to have kids whenever you decided that you were going to have sex. Now you have to live with the consequences. That's called life. That's called being an adult. Sorry. Yeah, being an adult's kind of shitty sometimes. I know. Kind of. I don't know. I am 21 years old, got married about 2 years ago, and have a daughter who's about to turn a year old. No regrets here. But see, I waited till marriage, and then I had a child like how everybody should. No birth control, no planning, nothing. Just doing it how God intended. Now, that's not everybody's life. I understand that. And people want to further themselves in their career. They want to further themselves in their purpose in life. And maybe their purpose is not necessarily having children and having a family. Maybe their purpose is to build a kingdom, and a kingdom of, business and wealth and that stature. That's fine. Do that. I'm in support of you building your kingdom. Just don't have sex. Just don't pursue relationships until that kingdom is established. Because what's that going to do? It's just going to get in the way and be a distraction anyways. So if that's your goal and if that's what you're saying, then great. Let's make it realistic. Don't pursue relationships. Don't pursue women. Stick to your vision. Stick to your job. Stick to that. And don't try and fool yourself and think that you can play both sides. You can't. You can't, and that shouldn't be done, and you can't have your cake and eat it too. But with the Democratic Party, if they, bring back abortion and everything, you might be able to have your cake and eat it too. All it costs is the life of your child. So, something you'll have to live with.
On and on and on, okay? The right wing is going back to the moralizing, annoying party that it has been for most of my life.
Yeah, it's a good
They
point.
had a little brief honeymoon where they rhetorically talked a lot about freedom. And I said, look, I don't think they mean it. And here we are, they didn't mean it. Freedom to them meant, well, I want to be able to say inappropriate things and get away with it. Okay, but that's not all of freedom. How many kids you want to have is a giant part of freedom. Whether you can control your own body or not is a giant part of freedom. And
Can we have both freedoms?
Yeah, can we have all of the freedoms?
Yeah.
Right? Can we be disciplined and principled and consistent? And so usually the case for politicians is no. But in this case, back to the main issue, this whole JD Vance, I'm gonna tell you how to live your life and you need to have more kids. That dog ain't gonna hunt. That is a terrible, anti-freedom, annoying message that Americans do not wanna hear, even if they have plenty of kids, let alone the people without kids. They're gonna hate you for life because you're judging them and shaming them when you have no business doing that.
Now, there have been a lot of questions about whether Donald Trump has come to the realization that JD Vance is a terrible VP pick, whether he has buyer's remorse. And in interview after interview, when he's been asked that question, he has remained consistent in defending JD Vance and arguing that he's a great VP pick. In fact, he just had an interview with Laura Ingraham, and Aaron Rupar is tweeting out about it because it aired as we were doing the show, I guess. And so Ingraham asked Donald Trump, what can you say to viewers to reassure them that JD Vance was an excellent pick? Donald Trump responded with, he's got tremendous support, and he really does among a certain group of people like families. He made a statement having to do with families. That was a verbatim quote from Trump.
Of course it was. That sounds totally like Trump.
Yeah, okay, but Ben Shapiro still seems optimistic about Trump winning another term in office. So let's hear his argument there.
So this is why I say Republicans are going to have to be significantly more careful about what they say against Kamala Harris than they have been against Joe Biden. Not because Kamala is wonderful or decent or anything like that, but because the media are waiting. They're waiting. Do not play their game. Just do not play their game. Donald Trump still has the advantage in this election. He does. He has the advantage in this election. It just requires the president of the United States, Donald Trump, former president, to be very meticulous about what he says. And the same is true for JD Vance. I have some faith that they will. Again, I think that both are intelligent men, particularly JD.
Well, I mean, real quick though, he is right that even now, Trump still has the advantage and Kamala Harris is the underdog in this race. He is right about that. Can Trump increase his lead over Harris? I don't know, especially with JD Vance fumbling over and over again in press interviews.
Did I hear that right? That he said Trump and Vance are both bright guys, especially JD Vance. Okay, because he knows he couldn't help himself. He can't stomach saying that Trump is intelligent because he knows he ain't.
You're right.
Okay, so anyways, that's, by the way, that's why I dislike JD Vance more, because I know that brother knows that this is BS, and he was pretending to be a liberal a minute ago and calling Trump Hitler and all that, and talking up his identity politics on how he's a poor hillbilly and all that stuff, right? So now all of a sudden you're massively conservative? No, you're perfectly bright. You just have no moral core. But okay, but agree.
Oh shit! I hate to say it, but I think Chunky Yogurt has a point right there. I hate to say it, but I think that's a good point, honestly. Listen, JD Vance, you guys might be a fan, you might not. I am not a fan. I'm not a fan of JD Vance. I'm not a fan of anybody in 2016 who was a never Trumper whenever Trump stood for and promoted things like America First, okay? And now in 2024, it's a lot more popular to be on Trump's side because it seems as though things with the border are a main issue, inflation is a main issue, and I think that Republicans are moving back into, I'm socially liberal, I'm, fiscally conservative. And that's not what we want. That's not what conservatives want. Listen, the Supreme Court passed or overthrew Roe v. Wade. We kind of got what we wanted. And now I think conservatives are really losing because we don't have anything else to run on except for the economy. And I think right now that's Trump's biggest sell is the economy. However, I don't know if the next generation, and when I say next generation, I mean me specifically, my wife Isabella, who hosts, I don't think that that's something that we're going to want to reward the GOP, the Republican establishment. I'm not on board with telling the Republican establishment, hey, you get our votes if a Democrat comes in and fucks up our economy. That's not something that I want to do. I don't want to just hand away my vote because of egg prices. I want a president, I want a leader who comes in there with an identity, with a mission, with morality, and who has a campaign, who has a vice president with those same goals and missions. And when I look at JD Vance, I don't see that. And it's for one reason alone. As a Christian, okay, I started dating my wife and she was not saved. She was not a Christian. And that for me was the number one reason why we couldn't get married, was until she had become a Christian. It was important that I remained faithful, that she would become Christian and that she would get saved. But, it was important that you wait and you fight for her salvation. And JD Vance's wife is not a Christian. And JD Vance's children are raised by a father who's a Christian and a mother who is not. And that to me is really alarming. That to me is not somebody who I want as a leader. Yeah, I would actually much rather have somebody who is, let's say, a Mormon and their wife is a Mormon and they're raising their kids as Mormon than somebody who's half in Christian, his wife is not Christian, and there's a divide in the household between theology, between their faith, and between their beliefs. Cannot have that. And listen, you guys might not agree with me. You might disagree. I'm curious in the comments down below. But to me, that says a lot. That says a lot about a man and his leadership in his home, in his household, with his family. And that is, number one, the most alarming thing that I can think of. And it's really pushing me out of the MAGA world. And it sucks to say. I want to be on Team Trump, but it's hard for me to be there 100% and feel like this is the right thing to do. And hey, that's just me. I'm not going to tell you guys you can't. I'm not going to tell you guys you shouldn't. This is personally how I feel. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. While you're there, please like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.